Well, things keep getting weirder for the New York Mets this offseason as it pertains to the continued coaching staff turnover. This week, we have officially learned that two important coaches for the New York Mets that were invited back are not returning to the organization for the 2026 season. What is up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the latest Mets offseason video right here on the True Mets Talk podcast. It's your boy CP. Before we fully get into this topic, I would highly appreciate you all smashing those thumbs up buttons if you enjoy these conversations, a different perspective and a different look at the situation that the Mets are faced with. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all your latest Mets offseason content needs, news, rumors, analysis, all that fun stuff. And make sure to comment your thoughts and opinions down below on this topic in the comment section. Earlier this week, the Mets coaching staff took another hit with Desi Drewskull, who was serving under pitching coach Jeremy Hefner for the 2025 season, returning to his original organization, the New York Yankees, after only one season spent in 2025 with the New York Mets. Now, if that wasn't a slap in the face already, we were all hoping for good news surrounding Antoan Richardson. And unfortunately, Mets fans, a coach that had a lot of, good input and doing of the stolen bases that the Mets were stealing in 2025 left and right, is also expected to leave the organization, as you can tell with this tweet from Jeff Passan, which reads, "The New York Mets and first base coach Antoan Richardson have not come to terms on a new contract, and Richardson is expected to leave the organization," sources told ESPN. Richardson was lauded for his work with the Mets base runners and will seek another job when his contract expires, which is going to be after the World Series concludes here between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, which was a very exciting game 3, by the way, going into 18 innings. But back to the topic here. This is just weird because you have a complete overhaul with the New York Mets coaching staff, which was expected, right? It was expected that the co-hitting coaches, Jeremy Barnes and Eric Chavez, were probably going to leave given some of the offensive struggles that the Mets endured, especially in the first half of the season. Jeremy Hefner, longtime pitching coach under multiple different regimes, did not survive and keep his job with the Mets as well. He was let go. Desi Drewskull, as I just mentioned, Mike Sarbaugh, third base coach, catching coach Glenn Sherlock retires, bench coach John Gibbons steps down in a respectful manner, and on and on and on it goes. And the guy that was invited back, and that all Mets fans, presumably, and this front office, by inviting him back, wanted back in this organization, given the great work that he did and the output that we saw on the bases, was Antoan Richardson. And now we are learning that the New York Mets are going to have to find another first base coach. Now, I don't want to sound dramatic. At the end of the day, this is just a first base coach. How impactful they are is really up to interpretation, right? But you could assume that something is going on here, especially the disconnect here that points and leads back to David Stearns. Now, the other rumor as it pertains to Antoan Richardson was that given the Mets' successes on the base paths and the credit that he is getting for said successes, he wants to get perhaps a salary increase and go and be a bench coach for somebody else. And of course, that can't happen with the New York Mets because they just recently, it was a quick hire. They hired Kai Correa, as we talked about with our first Mets Hot Stove stream, as the bench coach coming over from the Guardians organization, who was an infield coach there. He was the interim manager of the Giants back in 2023 when they let Gabe Kapler go. Things are just weird. And I was actually really surprised of how quickly the Mets hired a new bench coach after John Gibbons stepped down, and that it was Kai Correa, who's around 38 years old. He's thought of as a very highly analytical guy, loves the analytics. And so for that spot, with Antoan Richardson still pending and his contract still pending, even given the Mets wanting to bring him back, if the Mets knew that he wanted to get, I guess, a promotion to bench coach, why would they have hired Kai Correa that quickly? Especially when Kai Correa isn't Carlos Mendoza's guy to begin with. And that's a separate issue within itself. Things are just not making sense to me, and they're a little bit strange in the timeline of all of this happening. So Carlos Mendoza goes into year 3 upcoming in 2026 without, yet again, his own coaching staff that David Stearns is able to dictate. And oh, by the way, now we have reports that Carlos Mendoza is on the hot seat for the first half of the 2026 season. You talk about a situation where you're putting Carlos Mendoza at a disadvantage. This is exactly that. And so I'm just trying to make sense of this. And this is where this rant is coming from. But as it pertains to Antoan Richardson, this is clearly going to be a big blow for the New York Mets. And you just hope that they're able to retain all the information that they were getting from Antoan Richardson, from all the big jumps and the leads and all the reads they were having on the pitchers that made them one of the best base stealing teams in all of baseball in 2025, as you can see with this slide right here. These are the accolades with the statistics that I was able to pull from the 2025 season that was full of disappointment for the New York Mets in all facets of the game outside of base running. They were 5th in the league in total steals at 147 stolen bases. Juan Soto, whose career high in stolen bases coming into the 2025 season was just 13, and he basically tripled that. 4th in all of Major League Baseball with 38 stolen bases for Juan Soto is absolutely ridiculous. That gap going from 13 as your career high to 38 is just mesmerizing. When you think of Juan Soto, you think about his bat and not needing to worry about stolen bases and the potential of hurting yourself stealing bases. The leads and the jumps that he was getting. SNY's Booth, Keith Hernandez in particular, was disgusted with the opposing pitchers, not even paying attention to Juan Soto on multiple occasions. The caught stealing per game was the second lowest from the New York Mets, only behind the Detroit Tigers. So they had a really good stolen base percentage. And at one point, I do believe they had upwards of nearly 40 stolen bases in a row without a caught stealing. And they also were 10th in the league in stolen base attempts per game on average. A really good season for the New York Mets on the base paths. And the one guy that everyone was pointing to that is no longer coming back to this organization is Antoan Richardson, who possibly wants more money. I don't want to say that as factual information. That's basically what we can deduce. Maybe he wants to get that promotion, like I just said, to bench coach, which seemingly comes with more money than if you are a first base coach. But David Stearns and this front office hiring a bench coach while still not knowing the status of Antoan Richardson and what he wanted as a contract and maybe this promotion, and just going ahead and backfilling that position almost immediately after John Gibbons stepped down is something that makes me scratch my head. They had no intentions clearly of promoting Antoan Richardson, and it was first base coach for him or he leaves. And that is basically the gravity of the situation in what we have as answers right now. And this is what I will leave you all with. This is the most important thing to take away from this video if you are watching this and if you get to the very end. Now that there is a complete overhaul, besides David Stearns remaining as president of baseball operations and Carlos Mendoza remaining as the manager, there is nobody to blame. There are no scapegoats for this upcoming season. That is anybody but Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns. This season, and I just told you all that Carlos Mendoza is at a disadvantage because, yet again, he's not going to really have his own coaching staff, you would assume. I don't think Kai Correa was his guy, but he's still on the hot seat. He's going to be the first scapegoat before David Stearns. But I really do hope, because all Mets fans are starting to smarten up and realize the gravity of the situation. I really hope that Steve Cohen, as pissed off as he reportedly is, understands that this 2026 season is going to be a direct reflection of David Stearns, given all of the coaches that lost their jobs because of the failed 2025 season. There is no more excuses for David Stearns. He is bringing in his own guys. Kai Correa is a David Stearns analytical coach. Quite simple. There are no more scapegoats. If 2026 is a failed season, David Stearns is the sole person to blame. Now, let's hope that's not the case. Nobody's rooting for that to be the case. But when you have a team that has failed expectations in 2025 and a lot of holes on the roster, given all the free agents and positional needs, especially in the rotation, David Stearns needs to start feeling the pressure. And that's just the fact of the matter. So, Mets fans, let me know what you think on this Antoan Richardson situation, on Desi's Druskull situation, on this coaching staff situation with the New York Mets. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. Smash those thumbs up buttons and subscribe to the channel. See you all in the next video. Peace.